TIF agreement for FM Bank right away. So we have Tom is with us, and I will call on Clara Beck, our Community Development Manager, to get this conversation kicked off. Morning, Clara.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here in such lovely weather. Yes, Tom Dunaway from Baker Tilly is with us this morning. He is going to talk to us about the TIF for FM Bank that we've been discussing on and off over the last several meetings. He's done some initial analysis of the financials, and we have some discussion we'd like to have about the length of the TIF and then the size of the TIF district. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to share what he's been working on.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Is everybody able to hear me all right?
Yep. Yes. Perfectly, yes.
All right. Good morning, Tom Dunaway, Baker Tilly. Just wanted to hit on a couple of things today, as Clara mentioned, regarding the proposed FM Bank TIF district. So this will be on the Shopko site. The city previously created a TIF district in that area for a potential redevelopment project. I think that was, 3-4 years ago now. But that TIF district was never certified because the project did not move forward. So this proposed redevelopment would be on the same site. It would be a redevelopment TIF district because the existing Shopko building qualifies as structurally substandard. That same finding that was made previously would still be active, be reapproved as part of this process. Structurally substandard means the building, the cost of bringing the existing building into compliance with the current code exceeds 15% of the cost of building a new building of that size now. That's the TIF threshold for the qualification of a redevelopment district, is that more than 50% of the buildings within the district have to qualify as structurally substandard. So that's the basis that would allow this potential TIF area or this potential land area to be created within a redevelopment TIF district. So talking about the district, the developer has submitted a request for assistance associated with reimbursing them for the cost of demolition of the existing Shopko building on the site. So the proposed cost of demolition totals $286,000, and includes, a number of items associated with the demolition of that building. So one of the statutory questions I think in front of you today, as it relates to the creation of the district, is the but-for findings. Whenever you create a TIF district, you want to make the finding that the proposed redevelopment would not happen but for the use of tax increments associated with the project. So when we look at this project, one of the ways we can make that but-for finding is by looking at what the use of the TIF reimbursement would be for, which in this case the developer is seeking assistance related to the demolition of the existing Shopko building. So one could think about the use of TIF as being a means for removing a physical barrier to reinvestment. If you were to look at this site, and the potential for development on this site versus development on kind of a hypothetical greenfield site, you would see that the cost of developing on this site is greater than a greenfield site due to the presence of that existing building. Land acquisition or the acquisition of the site is likely to be higher because the seller is likely to seek value in the existing building that the purchaser would not. So there might be an impact there in relation to the acquisition cost being greater than a blank, vacant greenfield site. And similarly, the cost of demolishing that building is something that would not be present on a greenfield site, which could prevent or provide a financial and physical barrier to reinvestment on the site. So the thought of using tax increment on the site would really, the idea is really, if you're reimbursing for demolition, is the idea of removing that physical barrier to investment on the site and leveling that playing field between this site and the hypothetical greenfield site, which would not have that physical barrier to redevelopment. So that's one of the thoughts to consider today or provide comment today is, is that a comfortable and a good comfortable use of TIF for the city council, and is it important to kind of remove that barrier to investment on the site and level that playing field in terms of development of this site versus a hypothetical greenfield site? Related to that, the TIF request is for the cost of demolition, which is $286,000. We did prepare preliminary tax increment revenue projections based on information provided by the county as it relates to the post-development market value of the project. And it does look like, based on that post-development market value assumption and assuming a 2% annual market value inflation assumption, that the developer would be capable of being reimbursed that $286,000 of demolition costs over a period of 7 years. So when we create the TIF district, if that's the only thing that we're looking at for subsidizing and reimbursing as it relates to the TIF district, we can set the duration of the TIF district to be 7 years, or the amount of time it takes to reimburse the developer for $286,000, whichever is less would be the ultimate term. If increment came in at a faster rate, it would satisfy that budget reimbursement at a faster rate, and the district would be decertified at a faster rate than projected. But right now, it looks like it's proposed to be a 7-year district, because that is the term that it would take to fully reimburse that amount. So that's kind of the second question is that a comfortable and reasonable amount of assistance to provide to the development? And then the third question is how much area should we include within the TIF district? When we draw the boundaries of the TIF district, and when we looked at it previously for this site, we included the Shopko parcels as well as the city parcels that are adjacent to that. I think for purposes of drawing the boundaries of this TIF district, I would suggest including that same area of land within the boundaries of the TIF district. The city-owned property is currently tax exempt, so including it within a TIF district would not impact that. That property would continue to be tax exempt. But it would allow the city the flexibility to assist potential redevelopment on the city-owned site if that were to be sold at a later date by including it in the TIF district. You would have, whenever you create a TIF district, you have 5 years from the creation of the district to enter into any obligations. So if a development came forward on that other site within the next 5 years and it needed assistance, you would have the ability, you would have maintained the ability to assist that other hypothetical project in the future if it were to come in, if you were to include those two parcels within the boundaries of the TIF district now. If you did not include them within the boundaries now, you wouldn't have any ability to assist development or redevelopment on those sites, because there would not be an eligible building in those sites on their own would not qualify for redevelopment district. But if we included them within the district now, you would maintain that flexibility and that eligibility in the future. It would not impact the budget now. The TIF budget would still be the $286,000 that we're proposing for the demolition of the existing Shopko building. Any modification to the district that will come as part of any hypothetical future development on that city-owned site would still come back in front of the city council. So you would have a process similar to the public hearing process that's related to the creation of a district would occur at that time, and that any hypothetical future process as it relates to the development on the city-owned site would still go through this full process and would still require full city council approval and the like before that TIF district was modified to include that. The important part now is just simply the decision of if you include it within the boundaries of the district to maintain that flexibility in the future. So I think the recommendation would be to draw the boundaries of the TIF district around those city-owned parcels to maintain flexibility in the future, knowing that any additional use of TIF on that portion of the site would be a decision that would still come back in front of the city council via a modification process at a later date if development occurs in those sites. So you're just simply maintaining flexibility as it relates to that. You're not creating any other obligations of the district. All of that would come at a future date. So finally, if you were to move forward on a TIF district, if you were so inclined, you could make a recommendation to adopt a resolution calling for a public hearing at your next meeting on Tuesday, February 21st. Adopting the resolution calling for that public hearing would start the statutory process as it relates to the creation of a TIF district. It takes about 60 days based on the very notice requirements and steps that are defined by statute. So when we pull together a preliminary calendar, it looks like you could hold a public hearing on the proposed creation of this TIF district on Monday, April 17th. based on the way the calendar lines up and the statutory steps, that would be the quickest that a public hearing for the TIF district could be held. At that point, once the TIF district's been created, or once the public hearing has been held, and the TIF district has been created, the developer would be able to start by pulling building permits on the redevelopment of that site. Unfortunately, they're not able to do any redevelopment or pull any building permits on the redevelopment of the site until after the TIF district's been created. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So we're going to be looking at some sort of recommendation to the resolution on Tuesday night, establishing the public hearing. And so this morning, I think you're looking for direction and discussion on those three issues. Is that correct?
Yep, the but for, the amount of the TIF, and then the size of the district.
All right.
And the length.
But ultimately, it's a resolution Tuesday night that would establish or set a public hearing, which would start the process. Is that correct? So is there time, so obviously we're going to have a discussion this morning, but when we set that resolution for the public hearing, is it still flexible there? If there's questions or the council has on the terms of the TIF and the size of the district or any of those things, it's still a discussion
Still
up
have
until the
discussion
point
at
that we
that
have the
hearing.
public hearing. Is that correct? Okay, great. Initial thoughts on Tom's presentation on let's start with any of them, but I guess the justification of the but-for. Does anyone have any thoughts on the demolition of the building as a justification for the but-for?
I think my only question would be is that the building is kind of currently occupied and being used. So if it's being used, it's not derelict in the sense of the word. For example, the flour mill is vacant and has been vacant for a long time. The Shopco building is being used, pretty much every day of the week since the owner took over.
If I'd like to
Yeah, go ahead.
comment to that too. If you want to make a comparison too, as far as, and the term blighted, and I guess that was somewhat defined, or it was defined about the 15% there. But what I would like to comment is, when I look at the old foam linen building, there was a bank there that actually took down a blighted building and put up a new bank in that location. And, I don't see the Shopco building, like Anthony had mentioned, that's being used. And there's quite a few people using that building. After one of the council meetings, I had to go to work that evening, and it was very busy. The parking lot had numerous cars in it, picking up kids, and they were doing their thing there. So, yeah, I just wanted to make a comment regarding Anthony's statement there, too.
Thanks, Al. Anyone else have any questions or comments about the justification of the, Bill, please.
I would say, for the prior TIF district that never got certified, we did have, and Tom Denaway can help me, we had a study done to meet those statutory requirements, an external determination of what statute calls for, of what would make it blighted or whatnot. So we did follow that process before, and that's what I think Tom was referencing that would carry forward to this district and qualify the building according to statute. Is that correct, Tom?
Yeah, correct. We would have that study updated to the extent it needs updating at all, if any, as part of this process. But yeah, the idea is that structurally substandard finding would still be in place and carried forward and adopted as part of the creation of this district again. And yeah, as mentioned, the standard is structurally substandard, so it has to do with the cost of bringing the building into code compliance. It's not necessarily the fact that the building is blighted or derelict, but there would be a substantial cost of bringing it into code compliance. That would be in place for a new building of that type if it were to be constructed now.
Okay.
Were any improvements done on that building since then?
Laura, thank you.
Good question.
Yes, they did do some improvements in there in order to have the uses that they have currently. I think some walls were put up, I believe some electrical work, but I don't believe that it's enough work that it would remove that blight finding. So maybe a good thing for us to do would be to update that study.
Yeah, that study should be updated.
Yeah, I think we would need to have that study confirmed, just to ensure that nothing that occurred in the interim was sufficient or significant enough to have changed that finding. I don't believe it would have been, but we would just want to confirm that.
Sure. Scott? Yes.
Just a comment on the definition here. I think that as it's been laid out, the technical stuff with all the 15% and all of that, I think is what we have to remember. The fact that the building's being used is nice, but in the whole scheme of this definition, I don't think it even applies. A lot of people live in houses that would be considered blighted. A lot of people drive cars that are certainly blighted, but, you know, you can use things that are worn out, and you can occupy things that are worn out, but that doesn't apply necessarily to this definition. So I think that we got to stick with the terms here.
Thanks, Scott. Anyone have any thoughts on the length of the TIF that's proposed? It's up to 7 years, I think. Is that what Tom said, based on the numbers?
Yeah, I think initially we were talking like 3 years. That's all, as opposed to 7. What changed?
Yeah, was that an amount? Tom, I don't know if you heard the question there. I think initially, I'm not sure where that came from, but I think there was a discussion of, or an estimate maybe of about 3 years?
Three to 3.5 years was the original
Is
estimate.
it the amount or the financing, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Claire can confirm, but the change in duration has to do with the reimbursement for the demolition cost. Initially, I believe the developer was pursuing the potential for a deed grant, which would have funded 50% of that demolition cost. So the idea was for that demolition cost to be assisted. Initially, it was proposed to be half by the deed grant, half by TIF, which is where the 3.5-year duration came from. But I believe Clara said that the indications were that the project might not be eligible for that deed grant, so therefore they'd be looking for that full demolition amount to be reimbursed by TIF, which is what would necessitate the change to a 7-year duration.
Thanks, Tom.
So do we know why the deed grant? Do we know why the deed grant is unlikely to come to fruition?
Just the way that the program is structured, if there's the ability for TIF to cover it, then it's not eligible for the deed grant.
Anyone have any thoughts on the inclusion of the city-owned lots in any proposed TIF that would come before a public hearing?
I mean, we're not obligated.
No.
So, I mean, it's nice to have it there, but if something, promising comes along, we're not obligated. So it'd be nice just to get it in there now and then make the decision later on whether or not we want to apply it to whatever gets developed down there.
Sure.
I think as long as we're doing it, we should include the whole works. I mean, it only makes sense. If something comes along, somebody wants to build in there, they need TIF, we have it available.
So just to clarify the process, so you mentioned public hearing at the soonest to meet would be Monday, April 17th, correct? So what the direction now, the action now would be to bring a resolution and further discussion to the city council on Tuesday night to continue the process moving forward and continue to ask any questions or make any modifications up until the point that the public hearing is held. Is that the?
You need a motion to do
Bit-
that? I would offer that motion.
Thank you, Jim.
I just had one
We'll get a second first. Thanks, Al. Second, Scott. Yeah, go ahead, Al.
question. Is this, basically, I know that we're kind of talking about the inner workings of the TIF here, but is this specifically to FM Bank? Are we going to hear from Scott here this morning, or? That's what I'd like to do, is speak to Scott at some point in time in relation to this.
Sure, yeah, this TIF project is specific to the project that FM Bank is.
Okay. I guess if I could we have Scott come forward? I just want to ask some questions if we could do that.
Yeah, I guess it's up to Scott if you'd like to come forward tonight, or if you would like to join us on Tuesday evening. Scott, welcome.
You want me to come up, or?
You certainly can. Kind of putting you on the spot. If you'd rather come back and join us on Tuesday night, you're welcome to do that, but
But, yeah, I think I sent most of you an email, except I think, Anthony, I think you spoke with John, but, I think I sent most of you an email if you wanted to talk to me about the project that you could, and I know at least one of you has, so, but if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, I guess I do. I guess, Scott, being, you're a banker, you know finances much better than I do. What is your reasoning really for a bank asking for TIF money?
I guess I don't see how we're different from any other
Well-
business in town, but, I know we don't need a loan per se to finance the project.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of how a bank's balance sheet works is all the deposits that we have, those are our liabilities. I mean, those are small little promissory notes we have to our depositors. So we have a lot of debt on our books already.
Sure.
So the bank takes those deposits, invests them in assets, and one of the assets that we invest those deposits in is our real estate.
I guess too is when there's questions like this or issues like this that come up, I guess I look at it, what's going to be the best for the ward I'm in, is third ward, or what's the best for the people of Fergus Falls?
Sure.
And if there's any way to keep any type of a tax liability down or to help the public in a way. And I know you're familiar with this form. It's at Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council that I believe you guys have to file quarterly. We just pulled that, or I did, and in the FM Bank, just kind of a approximate because it was towards the end of September, the net worth was 22 million. Your estimated income for that year of 2022 was 5,386,500, and that was at the September mark.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of surprised why somebody with that amount of money wants to ask for TIF.
Sure. I think I would say that, if a developer came in and bought that whole area, and wanted to develop a project with commercial residential space on top, I think that was one of the options. Those folks there are not going to be necessarily low net worth individuals either.
Right. I think so too, that, what the plan is, and I guess I don't know that much about what your goal is to do with that. I know 2 years ago that there was people that were in the high-rise building over there wanted some type of they even called a dollar store to see if they could get a dollar store over in that neighborhood. And because they need some services like that. And I guess, I don't know what you've got planned, if it's going to be all professional services, or if it's, with the bank, or if it's going to be insurance or things like that. But, I guess I haven't seen any, kind of a building, what it would look like,
Sure.
or if it's going to be, masonite siding, or if it's going to be brick, or what it's going to be. I think it's got to be something too that's going to complement downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got some preliminary plans. We are in further discussions with three potential tenants, actually. One would be a coffee shop slash restaurant where you get light breakfast, light lunch. That's a potential to go in the building. And then there's two professional services tenants that we're having discussions with, and we're actually meeting with them a little bit more today. That would come in and rent some space there. As far as the exterior of the building, we're looking at stone and brick. We're looking at things that would kind of complement the architecture that Fergus Falls already has.
Yeah.
So,
Now, is it more so of a development thing that you want to do, or is it more so of a bank that you want to relocate your bank by a block?
we're going to move the bank into the building as well.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
But is it more so you want to move your bank into a different location, or do you want to try to develop it into other things?
Yeah, we want that area, we kind of thought
our idea was that this would be a nice anchor to the east end of downtown. And, bringing a nice building into that spot, and then leaving any excess space. We certainly aren't going to need the whole lot, I don't believe, or all the property that we're purchasing. So our thought is to leave the property to the west that we don't use available for sale. If the city decided they wanted to sell their 2 parcels of land there, we could look at selling potentially, the westerly portion of the property that we own to the same people for further development.
That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Thanks, Al. Thank you, Scott.
I got a question also.
Okay.
I got one for him and one for Bill. If this all goes through and you move into your new, do you have plans or for your old location? What's going on with that?
Yeah, we will be selling that. We have had 3 people, I believe, that have already kind of indicated some interest in our building.
So basically, we won't be bringing in a new building, and hopefully we're not going to end up with another vacant building that it's immediately should be taken over on the tax rolls by somebody else.
Correct, yeah. I mean, if we don't sell it right away, certainly we're going to be paying the taxes on that building
Yes.
until we do, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have one more question. Is it, are you low on space where you're at, or?
No, we've been actually talking about what we're going to do for about 5-6 years now. One of the options was to stay on our current site, remodel. Another option was to build on our parking lot and tear the existing bank down and make that our parking lot. But we need a little bit more space, I think, than what we have right now to do what we want to do. And we went through an analysis with a consultant. They kind of geocoded where a lot of our customers were. They advised us, to stay downtown. We had another consultant wanted us to move out west and on the west end of town. And we, in our heart, wanted to stay downtown. I think a lot of our customer base wants us to stay downtown. And so looking at a new building, there's not a lot of options downtown. So it was basically either remodel what we've got, tear down what we've got, build on our parking lot. This property came available, and we fell in love with it. It's on the river, and we think we can make that part of downtown kind of a nice area.
Do you also own that building to the west of the bank? That,
Yeah, the United Way building.
yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
the bank owns that.
okay. Do they own any more to the west?
No,
Okay.
no. Don't know. We use the garage is in the back. We use that, and then obviously United Way rents that. We haven't talked about selling that. We might end up keeping that because we like the garage space. We give the United Way very favorable rent. Yeah, we haven't talked about selling that piece yet.
Okay. Brent, did you have a question for Bill?
Yeah, I wasn't available to be here on that day when you guys had that training on TIF. With a demolition loan on TIF, does that still act the same way as a regular one does, that we still can collect the original tax base, and that the only thing that we're surrendering is going to be any increase on the taxes by that new structure?
Yep, that's always how TIF works. It's always that incremental value that you capture. So the taxes that are currently collected on the Shopco building will continue to be paid, of course, with any tax bill and then dispersed to all taxing jurisdictions. It is that new value that we capture that would be used to pay off this demolition loan. Tom, am I speaking correctly? Okay.
So basically, I mean, if we just don't allow this, I mean, the only thing we're going to be collecting is the taxes we get. But if we allow this, we're going to end up at, 7 years down the road collecting a considerable amount more in taxes that are spread evenly amongst everything.
Correct. And that is always the goal of TIF, is to create this development, get this new value, so it ultimately comes on the tax rolls. That's the goal behind it.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Brent. Any other questions before we vote? We have a motion to bring this to the Tuesday night meeting for further discussion and consideration of a resolution setting a public hearing for April 17th. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to move to back tonight, item number 1, and that is a Lake Alice water quality pilot project discussion. And we will call on Dan Larson and Mark Hansen of Water Quality 3D.
That we think can have an effect on Lake Alice. So I'm the government affairs person for Water Quality 3D. Mark's a lawyer, he's got the legal background, and he's got deep knowledge of waterology. So we're here to see if the city is interested in continuing to partner with us on this project. If you recall last year, we were here in a Zoom and did a presentation to ask you initially if you wanted to partner with us. Senator Ingebrigtsen had come to us, he'd seen the project work, and it's very recall the city agreed to partner. We put a bill together that included the city of Fergus Falls along with 4 other LGUs in a grant process for pilot projects on lakes like Lake Alice. Senator Ingebrigtsen got the funding in the bonding bill on the Senate side, and then of course everything crashed in the legislature last year. For the most part, bonding didn't get done. So we're back this year. We're going to take another run at it, and so that's essentially what we're here to ask you to do. Do you want to continue to partner with us on this? You're going to have questions about what's in it for the city, what do you want from us, but that can come at the end, and Mark's going to be able to address, there's a whole process that goes on there, but it's a flow-through device. You think of a muffler on a car. Water comes in, water moves out, and it affects the water quality in positive ways. So we've had some exciting results on some of the smaller, shallower ag lakes in south central Minnesota. And this will be